Hello, good morning again. This is your Sir Kevin. In accounting tutorials, we're now going to take past 16 property, plant, and equipment, but we're only going to talk about revaluation model. So, let's get started. What is revaluation model? It is an alternative method of accounting for PPE for which ang counterpart niya, ang default na accounting natin is cost model, di ba? Pero take note that it is the option of the entity if whether he's going to choose cost model or revaluation model. So let's get to what if he chooses revaluation model. First of all, this will apply to items that has primary inputs of fair value that can easily be determined. So probably this is an item that is currently being sold in the market. Or probably you have an active appraiser na pwede mong tawagan in order to value the asset immediately. So sa revaluation model, an item of PPE is still measured at cost, just like in cost model. However, after initial recognition, the item is subsequently measured at revalued amount. So what does that mean? Ano ang revalued amount? Revalued amount can either be fair value. If you have a specific vehicle, ipapacheck mo yan sa isang appraiser or a professional qualified valuer. And then that's that. Kung ano ang appraisal of that professional valuer, yun na yung fair value natin. Or it could be depreciated replacement cost. But do take note that depreciated replacement cost is a substitute to fair value. It uses the purchase price of a brand new identical item adjusted for accumulated depreciation. Halimbawa, hindi mo afford magpa-appraise ng item mo ngayon, no? Ang common na ginagawa, and this is actually more common in problem solving, ang ginagawa na lang is, you look into the market, what is the current price of the item we have. For example, you have a car of the same model that is being sold in a dealership. You look at that current price, and then you adjust the current price for depreciation in the same manner as kung ano ang age ng asset natin. Okay? So, depreciated replacement cost. To get deeper into that, depreciated replacement cost, it is the replacement cost, which means ito ang price or purchase price of a brand new item in an active market. And of course, depreciated replacement cost, ang gagawin mo lang sa replacement cost, i-adjust mo for depreciation, as the title would suggest. This is also known as sound value. Okay? Ito yung common na given sa revaluation problem solving. So, on to the next. Frequency of revaluation. So, how often does an entity revalue? It depends on the following principle. The carrying amount of an item of PPE shall not differ materially from its fair value. So, the entity has to ensure that its carrying amount is always similar to its fair value or not materially different. Take note that it does not necessarily mean na they are equal at all times. It only means na if they have a difference, it should not be a material difference. Meaning hindi masyadong malayo sa fair value. Okay, so anong gagawin? If you are carrying your asset almost equal to its fair value or not materially different from its fair value, there is no need to revalue. Okay? Magre-revalue ka lang kapag lumalayo na masyado ang carrying amount natin from its fair value. So that means, this frequency may not be a fixed interval. That also means that annual revaluation may not be necessary if the fair value is insignificant. That's why you will encounter problems na first time pa lang magre-revalue pero ang age ng asset is already 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Kasi po, revaluation is not annual. Also, revaluation must be done as frequently as needed depending on the volatility of changes in the fair value of the asset. So, even during an interim year, pwede ka mag-revalue because of, for example, a sudden market change in the pricing of the asset. Okay? So, a revaluation can result into two things. But let's talk about the first one. Revaluation increase. What's revaluation increase? Remember earlier na ang ginagamit na subsequent measurement is at revalued amount? If the revalued amount is greater than the carrying amount, materially greater than the carrying amount. It means meron tayong revaluation increase. And your revaluation increase may be attributed to either recovery of a revaluation loss or revaluation surplus. So revaluation loss, we'll talk about revaluation loss in a while. Let's reveal the other half. Revaluation decrease. Revaluation decrease will happen if your revalued amount is less than your carrying amount. So it's the opposite of revaluation increase, as the title would suggest. This is accounted as, una, reduction of revaluation surplus, and pangalawa, revaluation loss. So let's talk about the result of revaluation using this illustration here. So to explain, first time nag-revalue ka, ito yung data na meron tayo. Revalued amount is 1,200,000 and we're carrying the land at 1 million right now. The next time na nag-revalue, ang land natin bumaba, 900,000 na lang ang value niya. And then the third time of revaluation, nakabawi ulit ang land natin, 1,100,000. So take note that all figures are assumed, and take note that there is no accumulated depreciation that needs to be accounted for kasi land. Okay, so first revaluation. 1,200,000 versus 1,000,000. What happened here is the revalued amount is greater than the carrying amount, which means na positive ang difference nila. It is a revaluation increase. This increase will be accounted for this way. First, is there a previous revaluation loss na na-recognize natin? Kung meron, you have to cancel the loss first. But since this is the first time na magre-revalue tayo, both surplus and loss have zero history. Okay? So wala tayong previous amount. Since zero ka revaluation loss, everything will go into revaluation surplus. First year, your entry here would be to increase the land, you debit land 200,000 and credit ka ng revaluation surplus. Your revaluation surplus will be included in OCI and will be remaining in OCI until such time na ang asset ay may fully depreciated or maibenta. In our case, it's land, so you're just going to wait for it na maibenta mo before the revaluation surplus eventually becomes realized. Second time revaluation. So, 900,000 ang revalued amount. Magkano na ang carrying amount natin? This time, ang carrying amount is already 1,200,000, right? Kasi po, last year, nag-revalue tayo. Okay? 1,200,000, which means na meron tayong negative 300,000 or a revaluation decrease of 300,000. How is it accounted for? A revaluation decrease is accounted first as reduction in any surplus. And if there is still any amount remaining, that will be revaluation loss na. So, bawasan mo muna si surplus until such time na ma-exhaust siya. Pag maubos na ang surplus, dun ka lang magre-recognize ng revaluation loss. So, ang mangyayari po, the allocation of the 300,000 is first, a cancellation of the surplus, and if there is anything remaining, it should be allocated to revaluation loss. Entry on the second time revaluation. Of course, decrease in land is 300, credit land 300,000. Revaluation surplus is also cancelled out, debit revaluation surplus 200,000 and another debit to revaluation loss or impairment loss of 100,000. So you have that. Fast forward, diretso na tayo revaluation number 3. On the third time na nag-revalue, 1,100,000 na. Ano ang carrying amount natin? It is the revalued amount last year. So, 900,000 na ang carrying amount natin ngayon. Yan. Meron na naman tayo increase of 200,000. So, here is how it is accounted for. Una, is there a revaluation loss that we recognized in previous revaluations? Obviously, as you see here, meron po, 100,000. The 200,000 increase shall first be accounted for as a cancellation of that loss. You will recognize a gain on impairment reversal equal to 100,000. Take note, this is a revenue account, a gain account. It is a cancellation of the loss. If there is anything remaining from that revaluation increase, that would be the time na maglalagay tayo ng revaluation surplus. One more thing. Before we end, let's talk about revaluation surplus. Ano nga ba yung treatment ng revaluation surplus? Just like what we discussed earlier, revaluation surplus represents increase in value of PPE due to a higher fair value or revalued amount during revaluation. It is simply the difference between the revalued amount and the current carrying amount. Revaluation surplus yan. Well, of course, you have to consider kung merong previously recognized revaluation loss. Revaluation surplus is an equity item presented under OCI and it is transferred to retained earnings following the same behavior as the related assets depreciation. So, OCI, other comprehensive income, is the second component of your statement of comprehensive income. So, statement of comprehensive income, unang-una dyan is you have your profit or loss plus OCI. Profit or loss plus OCI is equal to statement of comprehensive income. Well, the thing here is bakit kailangan sila i-separate? Itong profit or loss po kasi, that is going directly into retained earnings. Which means na kapag diretso yan sa retained earnings, pwede yan ma-declare as dividends. Whereby, if an item is in OCI, hindi mailagay sa profit or loss, it is not yet available to be cashed in by the shareholders. Hindi mo pa pwede ma-distribute sa shareholders ang OCI. When siya pwede ma-distribute? Kapag ma-transfer na ang OCI to retained earnings, which follows when the asset is depreciated or if the asset is sold to an external party. So that's it for past 16 property, plant, and equipment revaluation model. The second video will be linked down in the description, so if you want to go right ahead, go check it out. Bye!
Bye! Have a beautiful time!